Welcome to the Full Ascend podcast. I am the ever so present father of the co host, Dr. Mark Leonard.
And that is me, the other co-host, the host. I am Andrew Leonard, your host today with my father, Dr. Mark Leonard. And we are so excited to have you guys join us for another week. What do you think we're going to talk about today?
You know, we've been talking about relationships, and oh my goodness, everyone got to know like my whole dating story. I don't know. I left that podcast thinking, did I just throw up with all of this personal information? And then I thought, you know what? It's interesting how to persevere and how to overcome. But I think, are we still going to talk about relationships?
Yeah, so I thought it would be a lot of fun to kind of continue on that conversation. So, for starters, in your coaching, you talk about relationships, right? Those are one of the habits or one of the areas that we focus on. One of the things that you do is you break those relationships down into four different categories, starting with yourself and then working out from there. So go ahead and explain that to us.
All right, yeah. So I look at our lives. We have four pillars, and it's very very interesting because two pillars, your table will fall. Three pillars will work, but once you have four, you have a very stable table to eat at. And so I have four pillars. Think of it as a table. Each of them equally need to be equally strong, and each of them need to be equal in length and fortitude. So the first pillar is self. The second is relationship, and that would be with your spouse or your loved one, whoever lives within your home. The next one would be community, and the community could be uh maybe employees, it could be neighbors, it could be church associates, it could be the lady at the checkout stand at Walmart. I don't care. It's just that relationship that's outside of the door. So that's the third one. And the fourth and final one is your relationship with God, the eternal Father. So we need to focus on all four of these to make sure that our table is super strong, because we're building a foundation of which to build Zion in our homes and in our lives.
Definitely. So today I wanted to focus a little bit more on pillar number three, the relationships with your community. And I'm sure a little bit of relationship with God will come in there, right? I'm sure it will. But I wanted to talk a lot about that relationship with your community and how to build a better community and maybe things that you coach on that help people maybe set that as a priority because I'd say, some people look at it unimportant, right? Hey, you know what? I've got myself, I've got my wife, I've got my family, I've got God, I've got what I need. Everything else is unimportant because I've got what's important. I've been there. A couple of the jobs I've had in the past with my sales career, I would go to work and I would hear these people, "Oh yeah, we're gonna hit the golf course after this. Hey Andrew, you want to come?" Or, "Oh hey, I've got this event going on this weekend." There were a couple different groups of people that would go down to Vegas, for either a fight or an event or to hang out or whatever. And I always looked at that for a minute there. I can't say always. For a little while, I looked at that as unimportant because I was like, hey, look, I've got my wife, I've got my kids. I'd much rather hang out with them than go with you guys. And I wouldn't say that to them, right? But I'd say, hey, I'm busy this weekend and busy this afternoon. Thanks for inviting me, but I'm all set. That's an easy trap to fall into because genuinely my family's important to me. But I also do think some other relationships can be important as well. So why do you say that relationships outside of your family are important?
Well, first of all, I feel like we need to discuss this idea of boundaries as well.
Yeah.
Because I think it's appropriate to have a boundary that is predetermined, predefined, that lines up to your values to ensure that whatever the activity is not stepping outside of the boundaries of what you deem to be appropriate for you, to be appropriate for your spouse, for your family, for your eternal welfare. And I've been one that has some very staunch particular boundaries to ensure that I do not devalue my relationship in the other pillars.
Yeah.
So one of them, for instance, is I look, I know I'm old fashioned and I don't think that's a problem. So I will not go to lunch with someone of the opposite gender, a woman, single and or married, I don't care which, with just the
Yeah.
two of us. I don't feel that's appropriate. Not because I believe that something nefarious will happen, but because I believe when we begin to work on relationships, we begin to have an emotional pull to somebody. And those emotional pulls and those emotional responses are natural and they're good. So if just hang on just a second. I know you're
Yeah.
getting ready to say something here. So with that in line, I would say I ensure that I never put myself in a position where I am likely or have an opportunity to create the most common affair is not physical, it's emotional. So I have to make sure I keep those appropriate boundaries.
Definitely. And I would say it's important to keep boundaries. Exactly what you're saying. It's very important to keep boundaries to make sure that we are protecting our relationships. And I think it's very important still to create community, to create other kinds of relationships so that you have that balance in life, right? My problem with my boundaries is my boundaries are very financially motivated. So for example, the guys that were going to the golf course after work, I'm going to go drop $70 on a round of golf. I could take my whole family to dinner for that. So I go, oof, not worth it. Same thing with like going to a concert, right? Some people love going to concerts. Concerts are fun. I've been to a couple, but for me, it has to be very specific because I financially look at this. I say, okay, hey, I can go drop $150 a ticket, $300 for my wife and I to go to a concert. It lasts about 3 hours, $100 an hour. Okay, for $100 an hour, what else could I do? I could go rent some jet skis for the whole day for a couple $100 for my kids to go enjoy, right? So I struggle with where is the balance of making sure you're still prioritizing community and doing things with other people and creating other relationships and maybe a support system or support group and being around people like-minded, but yet not getting caught up on the little things that I get caught up on, because for me, it's really hard. I would much rather take that, or another example, the Super Bowl. Some people will go to the Super Bowl, right? I look at this, I'm like, okay, hey, a couple $1,000s a ticket, $4,000, let's say, $4,000 for two tickets, 3, 4 hours of entertainment, that's $1,000 an hour. What can I do with $4,000? I could do a whole lot more than go to a game, right? So I don't know. I struggle with those kinds of things.
Yeah, and I think it's natural to struggle with those things, but let me throw a scenario at you. And because we're talking about that third pillar, those relationships that are outside of the home. So one of my dreams is to go on an Alaskan fishing trip. And there are only two people that are in my first line of who I want to go with. Point blank, you
Yeah,
and your brother.
totally.
Like, and by the way, I mean, why would we bring your brother? Because he's the one that would look at the bear and shoot him. Like he
Yeah.
has no fear. So
He's the one who'll
he,
teach me how to fish. Like,
he will be our protector. He is Grizzly Adams to a T. But if I was to say, hey, Andrew, we're going to go take a week and we're going to go fishing in Alaska and it's going to cost $4,000, would you go?
100%. Because I look at that and say, okay, $4,000, 7 days. Let's break this down. I'm getting a week's worth of entertainment for $4,000, where, the Super Bowl for 4 hours, not worth it.
Okay, so now it's $7,000 for the week, $1,000 a day.
It's a little harder.
Yeah,
And the
oh,
funny thing is this is not, I'm not financially motivated because, well, okay, I am. I am, right? I am very much being financially motivated, but could I afford a $7,000 trip and still be able to take my kids on a different trip? Absolutely. It's that, at what point is something worth it to me, right? And what else could I do with it? So that's where I struggle. And this is totally related to the relationships, but I guess not at the same time. I don't know.
well, it is because what you're defining here is what you value. And I
Yeah.
think everyone needs to go through this conversation with themselves and take an introspective look and say, what do I value? Now, let's just throw it. So you kind of struggled there. $7,000. Ooh, I don't know. What else could I do with that? Now, somebody calls you up and he says, hey, Andrew, it's going to cost you $7,000, but you're going to be able to rub shoulders with 4 or 5 guys who are your perfect avatar in your business. And they're the ones that could possibly open up the door to future business. Would you go?
100%.
Okay, so
Absolutely.
there's the proof that it wasn't about the money. It was about what is the value that you perceive that could come out of it.
Definitely.
And I think it's appropriate for us to have those conversations and begin to look at what do I value and what about how would I look at it from different perspectives. Going to lunch with a couple of guys from work or a couple people from work, easy thing to do. Networking, easy thing to do. But now do you mind if we transition into how to create a more in-depth real relationship that's not about sales?
That's exactly where I wanted to go next as well, is how to create more in-depth relationships because, okay, I was willing to spend $7,000 to go, be around the right people, to surround myself with the right people. Now, I stand by that, but I also had this thought in my head for just a split second going, well, I don't want these people to think that I only care about them for money.
Right.
So how do you balance that? How do you create relationships and create values, I guess, where it's not just about the money, but you're also surrounding yourself with the right people and doing the right things at the right times?
I was sitting last summer in a very cool room. It was actually a cabin, and in this room full of mostly men, there were some women there, and there were some spouses there. But for the most part, it was men. And in this room, there were people, and I'm not going to use their names because these are names that people might know. But let's just say one gentleman flew up there on his private jet worth somewhere between 3 and $500 million.
Wow.
Another
Wow.
guy sold his business for 120 million. Another guy sold his business for 50 million. These are
Wow.
these are super super wealthy individuals. And while we were up there, do you know what we did? We had these really cool activities. Let's grill a hot dog and a hamburger. Choose which one you want. Hey, do you want to go golfing, boating, or four wheeling? Go hang out and go have fun with these individuals. Get to know them as individuals.
That
Stop
sounds like a
looking at
blast.
stop looking at the individual as what do they bring to the table? How could they help me? How much money do they have? It's and by the way, I would recommend going on this retreat to just about anyone. And it's an expensive weekend depending upon what level you go, but it could be 3, 4, $5,000 for 2 days. For some of these folks, it was nothing, pennies. For others in the room, it was a stretch. And for others, they needed a scholarship to attend.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is, once you got there, all of the money things disappeared because I was like, that guy worth hundreds of $1,000,000 wears the same brand of jeans that I do. He's got the same t-shirt that I have. Just start looking at people as people and stop looking at them as their career or their outcome or their value that the world perceives them as.
That is probably the most important thing that I think is going to come out of this podcast today, look at people as people. I wish that that was easier for people to do. And I'm not saying that I'm great at it. I'm working on it. It's something I struggle with some days, right? Sometimes I get frustrated by the idiot who is just blocking up the whole entire aisle at Costco, chatting with somebody, and he just doesn't care. He just does not care that he's blocking the whole aisle. And it's easy to look at him as a nuisance instead of a person, right?
It was probably me, sorry. Because mo mom's like, "Could we just" she'll tell me before we go into a store, "Could you, we need to hurry." And then she'll look at her watch, she goes, "We have 12 minutes to get through Costco." I'm like, I don't know if I
I
could
don't know
do
how
that,
that's
sweetheart." And
possible.
yeah, but I'm like, "Okay, okay, I'll do it, I'll do it, I'll do it." I've So here's something super, super interesting. I found this great talk. This is off of BYU. It's not a talk, it's an essay.
Hmm.
The Divine Principle of Friendship, by Andrew C. Skinner. And I was really fascinated by this. But one of the things in here is this quote, and there's a whole bunch of quotes, but a quote by President David O. McKay. This is when he was a counselor in the first presidency. He said, "To live, laugh, love one's friends, and be loved by them is to bask in the sunshine of life."
Hmm.
Friends are meant to give us light and happiness and joy. They're meant to be someone who is there to celebrate and cheer us on, but also to be a shoulder to cry on. But if all you're doing is basing all of your interactions on what value do they offer me, that's not authentic and it's not real.
Definitely. Definitely. And I know that's something I need to work on. I don't necessarily, I mean, I've got plenty of friends, or I have some friends. I have some friends, and those friends are very important to me, not for what they bring to me. And so I just want to clarify that. I don't want everybody to think that that's all I care about is what kind of value can somebody bring me. That does happen sometimes, more with experiences than people, but I think that it ends up pushing away the people because of the experience, right? But I do agree that our relationships should absolutely be based off of the person, looking at the people as people, and how can we uplift each other and how can we be there for each other. I wish that that was common practice. I don't think that it is. I think in some areas you end up finding friends and your friends you're close with, and that's great. But I think what ends up happening is your friends are there and they're great friends until they're not, you know, and not
Mm.
always. Some people are friends for their whole life, and more power to you. I would love to find those friends that I have for the rest of my life. I hope that I have some of those in my circle right now.
Well,
But I
so
think it's
I know you do. I know you do. And there's one of them that happens to listen to this podcast. I will only use
true.
his initials, KH.
100%. The best friend I've had in my whole entire life. Outside of my family, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Outside of my family, he is without a doubt the greatest friend I've ever had. He has been there for me. He has stood by me. He still reaches out to me every once in a while. We live in different states now, so it makes it difficult. We don't see each other very often. But without a doubt, one of the greatest people I've ever known.
If he hit it big and was successful, and by the way, I mean, and he is pretty successful. So, right.
Absolutely.
So, but how do you feel when he hits success?
Phenomenal. I'm so excited for him.
Like it is like this incredible eternal joy when I have friends that are successful
Yeah.
because I am rooting for them. I am cheering for them.
And he's in a similar industry, right? He is a
Yeah.
coach as well. He's an executive coach, but he's a coach as well. And I don't even care that our paths could, you know, or not our paths, but I don't even care that our potential clients could overlap. I am excited for him when he sees success. I don't like it doesn't mean that I'm not going to. it's just exciting for him.
It absolutely. I had a really cool experience. I was here in Hawaii. This happened to me last week. There's this particular brand that is one of my favorite brands of Hawaiian clothing. It just has the artistry, the colors, the stickers that they create. I was looking to see if I had a sticker right here because I actually have several of their things. And unfortunately, as the market sometimes happens, they ended up closing that arm of their business.
Bummer.
And I was just so sad for them. I've met both the the husband and the wife who own that business, and I was just so heartbroken to hear that they closed. Cool story. I'm going over to one of my favorite little areas here in Honolulu, a place called Kaka'ako. It's great restaurants, great seating area, cute little place to work, incredible murals. And I'm walking through the parking lot, and lo and behold, there's an SUV with the name of this company.
Oh,
I
cool.
thought, oh, get out. There's no way. And so I walk up and I knock, I knock on the well, on the front of the SUV. I don't want to go right up to the window and scare the lady that's in it.
Yeah.
Because, here's this strange guy walking up to you, right? When you're least expecting it. And she opens up the door. She goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you need me to move?" She's worried about parking. I said, "No, I just want to let you know, I think you guys are amazing." She goes, "Wait, what?" I said, "You guys are absolutely phenomenal. I am so heartbroken that you had to close down your clothing line. But I just want to let you know, I have been so impressed with you and your husband for years." She goes, "Wait a second. I remember you. I met her 2 years ago,
Wow.
and we talked for 45 minutes like we were absolute best friends, cheering each other on with our business ventures and the things that we're doing." Could you imagine if we did that at church?
Oh my goodness. That would be life changing, experience changing. The
Uh,
amount of times that people, sorry, what were you going to say?
no, I completely agree with you. It would change our church experience if we showed up with that mentality of excitement for somebody else.
This is, I'm so glad you brought that up. So I'll try not to go on a little tangent. I want to make sure people understand that I love the church. I truly do. I love the gospel. I love the gospel. I hate the culture inside of the church in Utah. I'm just gonna say it as it is. A lot of people know. You go to church in other states. I mean, we used to live in Florida, right? And you'd hear people say, "Oh yeah, we visited Utah. It's weird. It's different." It's true. It is different. And it's not different everywhere. I've been in some phenomenal wards, and there are amazing people everywhere you go. Something that really frustrates me about the way that we do our ministering is how disingenuous it is. It is not about just celebrating people and being there for them. It's about checking a box a lot of the times, and it drives me bonkers.
Y- you know what? I can, I wish I could argue with you, but I agree. I think too often people go, well, it's an assigned friendship. And okay, then I just need to check a box. And they make this call or they stop by the house or whatever the case may be. And too often it's a checkbox. And sometimes what's really difficult is that you're paired up with someone that is it's like this forced friendship that you're nothing like.
Yeah, not only that, I feel like you're paired up with somebody that it becomes like a forced friendship, and then you are assigned to people that it's a forced friendship. Like the amount of times that my wife's minister has been an 80-year-old lady who just doesn't get along. Like, it's not that she's not a sweet, nice lady, but that's just not a friend for my wife to hang out with. They're not gonna go grab lunch one day, right? It happens way too often. Or it's really hard because you're not always going to find people that are the same, right? I completely understand that. But what happens, I feel, way too often is it becomes a forced friendship, like you're saying, which then creates a very uncomfortable and awkward experience, which then turns into people feeling like they are just a box, right? Something that's happened to us. There have been times in our marriage where we were less active and times when we maybe couldn't be at church as often as we would like to. There was a time where we are working around the clock on top of our full-time jobs, on top of our side jobs, then we're also Instacart shopping, and we're just wanting to make sure that we make as much as we possibly can, so we're providing for our family. Because I'm a strong believer that instead of cutting things out, I'm just gonna make more to have a life I wanna live. So, with that, we made sure that we worked as much as we could to pay our bills, and that meant there were a couple weeks in a row where we left Sacrament maybe 3/4 of the way through or right after sacrament we left because we had to go take this Instacart shopping order because you know what? The money was there and we needed to make that money to pay our bills. Or there were, some times when we just couldn't quite go to all of our classes because of different situations that we were in, and so my wife didn't necessarily know the people in the ward very well. Well, instead of being assigned a minister or having somebody show up to see how life's going for her or somebody coming and trying to befriend her or somebody reaching out just to say hi, instead of any of that happening, what happened is they tried to assign her a calling that was going to force her to be a relief society. And then when that wasn't going to work out, a couple weeks go by and she gets a phone call. Oh, hey, will you please come to this event and say the prayer? And it just very much comes off as disingenuous. And here's the thing: I've sat on the other side of this, right? I've been in the meetings in priesthood or in the meetings with the bishopric when I was the executive secretary, where we talked about, well, how can we get this person to be here? How can we get them to show up? And it very much was, oh, hey, maybe we can get them here if we give them a calling. Maybe we can get them here if we, basically force them to be here instead of somebody showing up to be their friend and hoping that that was enough, right? What happens is I feel people can see right through it and they can see exactly what the intention is here. And it's the priority was not my wife's spiritual well-being. The priority wasn't to make sure that my wife was going to make it into heaven. The priority was, oh, hey, you know what? She's not here. Let's see if we can force her to be here so we could check our box. They don't know her. They don't care about her. They didn't reach out to her. And then when she ended up not being able to show up to that thing, did she ever hear back? No. No, and that's proof that nobody cared about her well-being. They weren't trying to be friends with her. They were just trying to force her to be there. It's just disappointing. I wish people would be a little bit more genuine in the way that they showed up for their ministry.
Okay, so then let's talk about that because look, here's the reality. Uh, we could speak ad nauseum about all the things that are wrong with
Yeah,
how the ministering program is working. I think when you get down to the heart of it, it's an incredible opportunity.
definitely.
But I think because we're fallen human beings, we often struggle with this. So w- knowing what you know in your station of life, married and kids, and just really, really having trying to pay debts and get into a better financial situation for your family. What would you do differently for you? Not for the whole program. What would you do differently for you to be more authentic and more of a friend in the ministering efforts?
I would be more willing to try and create a relationship, and that's something that I should be better at without a doubt. Um, I actually haven't had a ministering assignment in a long time. It's kind of funny. The last ministering assignment I had, I was given, and then the guy, like anytime I tried to reach out to him, he just never responded. So I kind of ended up giving up after a couple months. But that's on me. But I think relationships and friendships is where it's at. You know what? I'm going to sit next to somebody in elders quorum and we're going to chat, right? Hey, this is my ministering brother that or the person that I'm supposed to minister to. I'm going to sit with him. We're going to chat. We're going to talk about the stupid things of life. I don't know. I'm not going to bring up, hey, well, how is your spiritual well being? I'm not going to sit here and say, hey, do you read your scriptures every day? It doesn't matter. Well, it does matter eventually. Eventually that matters. But right now, I'm just going to talk about being friends.
It I think that's exactly it. I think we need to stop looking at as a checkbox of did I ask about their spiritual welfare and start looking at who is this person in front of me and how can I get to know them? This is really, really cool. This is I have no idea. And it's on my phone, which is so small, and my eyes are not what they used to be. So let me play a little trombone here. Okay. So this is Orthodox rabbi and Professor Stanley Wagner often told a story attributed to the Talmud, which is the great repository of Jewish law and tradition about Father Abraham, who is called the friend of God in both Jewish and Christian scripture. I thought that was really cool that Abraham was called friend of God. And I
Hmm,
thought, man,
that's
okay,
interesting.
I would like to be known as that. The patriarch is camped out in the wilderness and invites a traveler into his tent to enjoy some hospitality. Sounds like ministering to me.
Yeah.
During the course of their conversation, Abraham learns that the stranger is a fire worshiper and won't pray with the patriarch. Abraham immediately throws the man out of his tent. He goes to bed satisfied. I suppose that he has upheld Jehovah's honor, right? So, oh man, that guy was weird. I just needed to get rid of him. That was a terrible situation. That night, Abraham has a dream in which the Lord comes to him and says, Abraham, Abraham, I borne with that ignorant man for all these many years. Could you have not suffered him one night? Whew. The
Wow.
message is clear. If Abraham was the friend of God, he was supposed to act like his friend by exercising faith, exercising patience in the face of ignorance. We've had some really look. I had just until recently, and brother Tony, if you're listening, I'm going to share a story, a real story, and I've actually shared it with him, so I feel comfortable sharing it here. He came over to our house when we had first moved into the ward. He was assigned as our ministering brother. And I was all, this guy is so intense. And he left, and Becky and I looked at each other like, oof, oh my goodness. I felt chastised. I felt judged. I felt that he just viewed the doctrine of Christ very differently than I did. And
Hmm.
I was thinking, well, okay, that was rough, but one and done. I'm not going to have to deal with that one again, right? Because it's ministering. Who keeps coming? Well,
Yeah.
then he teaches in elders quorum. I'm like, oh yeah, no, same dude, same type of like, what is going on here? And I'm telling Becky, I'm like, this is really an uncomfortable situation for me. I just do not see eye to eye with him. Fast forward 2.5 years of me trying to be patient, and he didn't come around very often, so I was pretty good with that. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, sweet." And I'm serving in the temple, and he's working in the temple. He's
Hmm.
employed by the church.
Wow.
And one day we're standing in the baptistry. It's about 6 o'clock in the morning. It was pretty slow. And he points to a picture and he goes, that picture. He tells me something about the history of that picture there in the Gilbert, Arizona temple. I was like, oh, that's really fascinating. And we just started talking and we found things that were common ground. And over the course of multiple conversations in the temple, in the break room, passing each other in the hall, we got to know each other on a personal basis. Then, when he came to our home, and just recently, when our ward was split, he was no longer in our ward. And I was actually really sad that he was no longer
Hmm.
going to be my ministering brother. I finally got into the point that I found commonality. And if I want to be a friend of God and he wants to be a friend of God, shouldn't I try to be a friend with a friend of God? Like,
Totally.
find that commonality, whatever it is. And we found some. He's a really deep thinker. He's very cerebral. I enjoy those deep cerebral conversations where we pontificate upon deep scripture. Uh, I don't do that with many people, and
You
so it
know,
was fun.
that does sound fun, and I think there's a lot to be said about what you're saying here is it doesn't have to be traditional. It doesn't have to be, you show up to somebody's house, you share a scripture or story with them, and then you leave. I would say that there's a lot more connection that happens in the unconventional, right? Somebody's going to get mad at this, but you start talking in the hallway in between sacrament meeting and elders quorum, and you're having a good conversation. Don't be afraid to have that conversation for the next 30 minutes or an hour. I'm okay. So you're going to miss out on class, but you know what? You just made a really good connection, and that could do more for somebody's spiritual well being than sitting in class one day. Maybe they needed it that day. Maybe it looks like I don't know, you're going for a walk and the person's out there raking their leaves and you stop by and you comment on the flowers they have in their yard. And then you start talking for 30 minutes because you happen to both know about flowers. I don't know. It doesn't have to be traditional in this, hey, you know what? We're going to become best friends. And you may never end up bringing up their spiritual life. And that's okay. I don't think that's necessarily what ministering is about. Maybe it is, and maybe at some point it's going to turn into that, but it doesn't have to. And I think that's what's important about ministering is, you ended up learning that he's cerebral and he knew history about this picture. It was in the temple, yes, but you were learning history about art, not necessarily history about the gospel,
Yeah.
right? It doesn't have to be this very specific, oh, we are going to connect on the Book of Abraham. We're going to connect on the Book of Mormon. It doesn't have to be something like that. It can just be friendship. And even if you don't have a lot in common, most people can find one thing that they have in common, and it may take some time, like it did for you. And I think that's okay. That's
It
okay. That's going to do a lot more than just showing up, or calling somebody up and trying to force them to come to elders quorum because you need them to pray.
and the application of this is so far reaching in our relationship with the community. It doesn't matter if it's church or an employee or an employer or a sales conversation or insert whatever human interaction you want to insert here. It's about connecting with people because when we begin to see them truly as sons and daughters of a heavenly father, it doesn't matter. Just remember that. And now, I one of our clients, he talks about his sales process, and the young bucks who are just all salesy, and they're trying to use every sales psychology. He goes, "Let's just get to know the individual. It's a
Yeah.
long game. Sales should never be about the closure. Sales should be about a relationship that builds trust, that ensures that a closure will happen." If it's the right thing. And if it's not the right thing, being okay going, I just love that I got to know the human, the individual. I love traveling the world and talking with people from all over the world. Had the most amazing conversation with a lady last night. Mom and I went out and got some ice cream. One of our favorite traditions here in Honolulu. Great local ice cream shop. Lady behind us was listening to her accent. I'm talking to mom like, I really wonder where she's from. We kind of have a little conversation about ice cream, and then we leave, and lo and behold, she ends up behind us as we're walking. And I turned, I said, I can I just ask you something real quick? She goes, yeah. So where are you from? She goes, oh, that's complicated. I thought, oh, here we go. Whenever someone says it's complicated, it's like, this is good because she goes, I am from the Ukraine. I thought, "Yeah, that's complicated with what's going on in Russia and
Yeah,
Ukraine."
yeah, no kidding.
And then she said, "And, I live in Israel." I was like, "Oh, with what's
Very
going on
cool.
right now with Israel and Iran, yeah, complicated doesn't begin." She's nervous to bring up her heritage because she's
Yeah,
unsure how someone will respond. We connected, well, mom and this lady connected over pineapple ice cream. Talking about a
nice.
totally completely innocuous thing to connect over. It doesn't, like, there's no meaning to it. But we left that relationship of getting to know her with excitement that we had a new friend. And it doesn't mean that you have to see someone the same politically. One of my best friends in our city is on the city council, and her political views are very opposite mine. I
Yeah,
love this woman. I think she's fantastic. I think she's great. Who cares? I can see past the politics. I see the individual. I love her and her husband and her kids. I think that's cool. Let's let's stop looking at relationships as this value base of what will they do for me, and start asking ourselves, how can I learn about them? If we could just learn
yeah.
about other people, the sales will come if that's what you want, or the ministering will come if that's what you want, or the friendship, or the date, or whatever it is that you want out of it must start with true friendship first.
Amen. Amen. I love that. This has been fun. I love talking about relationships and just how we can be a little bit better at it. It's one of my favorite things, right? Reading The Go Giver and then The Go Giver Sells More and stuff like that. Just focusing on people. People are not objects to help us get further in life. We're here to connect. I mean, there's what love your neighbor as yourself. The commandment is that we're supposed to be here to love people, to be here to care for people, to be here to be there for people. And I think that with a little bit more community, we can all just have a little bit more excitement in life and a little bit more joy.
Absolutely. If Christ said, "As I have loved you, love one another," he wasn't speaking to you as the individual. He is speaking to you collectively. That means me and you and your wife and your kids and your neighbors and your enemies and mine. And just love as I have loved you, meaning he loves every single one of us. As I have loved you, love one another. By this ye shall know. Oh man, just love people for who they are. I almost made it out of a podcast without tearing up. I was so
Yeah,
excited.
almost. We're in the
Almost.
last 30
Oh,
seconds.
all right, you guys and gals. If you are on YouTube, we've got a phrase, uh, that doesn't suck. Our current view right now is absolutely amazing. We are just so grateful to be here in Hawaii. Unfortunately, we go home next week. But the good news is we're coming back. So, and every place has a beautiful place to go and visit. This week, go be a friend. Go get to know your neighbor, not a checkbox. Get to know who
Yeah.
they are and try to connect over what you do have in common, because there is one thing every single one of us has in common. We're all sons and daughters of a heavenly father, and he loves us. And as such, we love you.
Yes.
Please go serve someone this week. Go help someone in need. Go be a friend. Friend in need is a friend indeed. Go be that for other people. Thanks, you guys.
Have a great week, everybody.